In today's episode, you're going to be putting your object-oriented skills to use to create your very own code-only PyGame. This is Pong in PyGame, using the skills you already have up here without using outside help. We are going to build the game, and I'm going to take you guys through my logical thought process, break things down in pseudocode, and through interactive lessons, all to help you guys further your understanding and get building games faster. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Code with Josh. Whoa, for obvious reasons, guys, I'm Josh, and I am stoked to have you guys back for another episode here. Now, if you're wondering, I haven't done PyGame videos before, but I do have my 13-hour Python course, and this is one of the projects inside that course. Right, so if you haven't made it that far in the course, check it out. There are other games in there more advanced. This is a foundational game. This is harboring all your knowledge that you have of Python and using the bare bones of PyGame. Really, this game is about showing you that with pure Python, we can create an interactive application. I will be taking you guys through some basic steps of PyGame as well to get you guys built up. If you guys are ready, do me a favor and like and subscribe to this video. If you're ready to learn, like. That really does help this video reach more students around the world. And I'm curious to know, what games do you guys want to see developed on this channel? This is just the first game, which will most likely become a series at some point on this channel. And if you guys missed it, you can get my 3 free Python courses, absolutely free, right? They're over on the channel. I'll link them here probably, as well as in the description over on my free platform. All right, guys, most of my stuff is absolutely free. It is a big help if you use the links in the description. A few of those links I do get a small kickback for, and other links are just my content, my free courses, or my newsletter that I have all created to help you in your Python journey. All right, enough chit chat from me. Let's dive into why you're here. Let's create a PyGame and let's break down Pong together. So really, before we dive in, we just want to go through and I want to introduce you guys to the game we're making today. And I put 98% Python because we are going to use a little bit of PyGame, right? But this game is mainly to build on your current understanding of Python to take you to the next level, all right? So mostly just pure Python, no outside help. The game we're making today is just a simple Pong game over here, and all these objects, these shapes, we are going to be creating with code. I want this to be a class-based game, all right? So use PyGame to create our Pong game, and we're gonna do this in less than 30 minutes, all right? And finally, it's just gonna be 100% code. I don't want to use any pictures or any outside help, all right? Let's just stick to pure Python and use your current skill set. A quick game overview is we're gonna have these 3 objects on the screen, okay? So paddle 1, paddle 2, and paddle 3. Don't know why I said paddle 3, that's our ball. Now, really, these 2 paddles are going to be from the same, so I know that we need to create these. I know that I need to get a ball somehow, and we're going to have some text on the screen. All right, so the needed operations we have, I kind of just listed those, right? But I'm just thinking step by step here, all right? If we have a game, what's going to interact with what, and how's it going to function? So I have to create some paddles, create a ball, I have to move the ball, and I have to reset the ball, right? That's really the 4 actions that this game is going to have. I also know that I need a way to run the game, okay? So our game loop, that's normal. Every single game has that, as well as a way to get the ball to bounce, all right? So I'm going to start to think about that now. How can we get the ball to bounce, right? But let's build on what we know we need. In real PyGame fashion, how I like to structure it out is really in steps. And if you can memorize these steps, then really every game structure is the same. We begin with importing our modules. I then like to create all my variables, more specifically my constant variables. What do we have in the game that's never going to change? I like to keep these at the top with all of our other variables. Next, we're going to initialize the game, create the game settings. This is like the screen or the clock, all the things just we need to create our game. And then game variables. What variables will I need in the game that are going to change? That's why they're different from our constant variables. Once we have step 1, 2, 3, number 4, we can add in our game functions and actions. And I said 4 2 times, really that should be 5. Our game loop always goes at the bottom of our code, all right? So step 1, import variables, game settings, all of our functions in the game loop. Are you ready? Let's dive into VS Code. Here I am inside our VS Code file, and you can see that I've taken the liberty to actually pseudo code out the steps. These are the same steps that I talked about in our lesson, all right? So I'm trying to get my thought process of what we started with and bring that into VS Code. Now that we have this overall game broken down to steps, it becomes easier to create. So, beginning up at top here, our game modules. What are we going to need for this game? So I'm going to say, let's import PyGame. And for the game today, all right, I am saying import star, all right? Once you start working with larger games, especially other frameworks, I highly don't recommend this, okay, right? Importing star, it doesn't allow you to keep track of where things are coming from. Today, it's mostly just Python, a little bit of PyGame, so import star for me. That's going to import the entire PyGame library. I'm going to tap into random, and I'm going to say from random, I'm going to import choice. I'm going to use this, as well as I'm going to import system. All right, this is going to allow us to exit and close our game more fluidly. These will be the 3 outside modules we'll use. Really, it's just one function, choice. This will allow us to choose a random item from a list or an iterable. PyGame, the entire PyGame, and then system for exiting our application. Now comes the juicy stuff. We have our modules. I'm going to create my game class. All right, I want to store everything in a class. I'll just export it here as Pong game. All right. Now, before we initialize anything, here is a great place to store all my constant variables. What things in this game are never going to change? All right, so pause the video and think about that. If you want to write down like a piece of paper, post-it note, all right, do that now. Okay, so I'm going to put a few things here. Because they're constants, I am putting them in all caps. So I'm going to say width and height. All right, we're going to have our 2 variables. I will say the width is 800, the height is 600. I always like to have some colors in here, right? So based on what we saw, my game's going to be black and we're going to use white. So let me just bring in those. You are welcome to use any colors you want. And in fact, when I'm creating other games like this, I bring in a lot of colors. It allows me to just change things as I go along to see what I like and what I don't like. So I have black and white. Let's create a few other things here. So let's say paddle. How big's the paddle going to be? I could have a width and a height for that, right? So let's say the width of my paddle. Let's start small. Let's say 15. And the height has to be taller, right? Let's say 100. Oh, that's too big. 100. Great. We're going to take our ball. What things do we have to know about the ball? The radius. I'm going to get ball speed. And I actually need 2 of these. So ball speed, we're going to have an X. And we're going to have a Y to give it 2 speeds. Let's say the radius of our ball. So how big do you want it to be? You can experiment here, right? Smaller is going to be harder and bigger will be easier, right? For our game here, let's say 15. The ball speed, let's start slow. If it works, we'll go faster. I'm going to say 5. All right, so that's going to be our speed. Great. To get started, that's really all I need. All right, this is great. Now that we have these class variables, I'm going to create my initializer, my constructor method. This, well, I'm still in caps lock, so let me change that. Now this constructor, this method will automatically run every time I run my game. So what do I need to start in the beginning? Well, I need to initialize everything, right? I need to create a game screen where I'm going to play this game. I need to create my players, all of this information. So that's where I'm going to do this inside init. So every time we create a game, it creates new players, a new screen, everything we need. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to use font in this game, so I need to initialize it. And because we have background music, I also need to initialize it. All right, so I'll put those up top there. Next up, I can create my screen. So typically I like to call it screen. You could really call this anything. Popular naming convention to see window or screen. I will say display.set mode. Now, set mode only takes one argument, but we need to give it width and height. So I'm going to wrap width and height as a tuple. Right, so we'll just say here using our constant variables, and because they're on the outside, right, self.width and our height. Wonderful. Next up, every game, not every game, right, but typically I like to create a game timer. This will allow us to change the FPS of the game. A popular question I get asked is time. I'm using time, but I did not import time. All right, this is not the same time. This is a time specifically from PyGame to deal with FPS. If you want to work with actual time in a game, you still need to import time, okay? It keeps our code separated. So we have our screen, we have our clock. I'm going to give my game a name, so I can say display. And remember, the display is like the screen of our game. So display, I want to set the caption. You can give a string here, whatever you want to call your game. PyPong 2.0. Is there a 1.0? Absolutely not. The final game settings is I want to load my music. So I'm going to say mixer music. I would like to load. What do I want to load? Well, the name of your file. You can really use MP3, WAV, or OGG music files in here. Okay, MP3 is most common. All right, so I'm just going to put my MP3 file. And then we just have to say mixer music.play. Now, this is automatically going to play your music, but at the end of this, let me spell this correctly. At the end of this song, it's just going to stop. If I want it to loop infinitely, all we need to do here inside play is I'm going to say -1. That's going to play forever. Awesome. Great. So those are the initial game settings. Let me come down here. I like my comments, right? So let's say game settings. We also need our game variables. Okay, so inside the game variables, these are the things that I need to control that are going to change throughout my game. So I'm going to create player 1. I'll create a player 2. We need a position for the ball. So I'll say like ball pause for ball position. We'll have a ball speed. Nope, not the same. We are going to get a P1 score. This is the score for player 1. Let's just say player 2 score. I need a way to keep track of those. And then I need text. So I'm going to create a font. All right, so these are all the variables. We need to populate the values now. So player 1, I'm really going to just give it an X and Y location. Where is player 1 going to appear? I'm going to use PyGame to draw this later to create a shape. All right, so an X and Y value, player 1 is going to be on the left of the screen. If we look at the picture here, you can see that player 1's on the left with a little bit of X. So I'm going to start with X, let's say 50. And then I want it to be in the middle, right where we see it now. To easily get the middle, I'm just going to take the height of the screen and subtract the height of the paddle, right? Because I need to account for that. Once we have that, I can really just divide that by 2 to get it in the middle of the screen. That'll do a pretty good job. For our player 2, we need to do a little bit more. So where's player 2 going to start? Let's just do self.width minus 50. That puts it in about the same position. But then I also need to subtract the paddle width. Great. So that takes care of X. And then for Y, I can really just copy this because it's going to be the same thing. We want it to be in the middle of the screen. All right. So these are two lists. How do we access an element from a list? Think about that. Answer that. If you can't, answer that. All right. So I have an X and Y value for player 1. I'll just say X, Y, locations for P1, P2. Okay, the ball's position. When the game starts, I ideally want the ball to be in the middle of the screen. So let's just take our width, divide by 2, and then take our height and divide by 2. Okay, so that puts the ball in the middle of the screen. The ball speed when we start, well, we already determined up here that we have these two ball speeds. I'm going to quickly add these to a list. By adding these to a list, it really just allows me to access and interact with them faster at a later stage in our game. All right, so our ball speed's now held together. P1, the game score starts at 0. Okay, so we can set that. And then our font. So in PyGame, I initialized my font. All right, so you can see that right here. I initialized the font. I need to use it. To use font, to load font, I'm going to tap into the module font. This is from PyGame, and we're going to tap into the font class. Now you can see here this is a file argument, and this is the type of font you want. All right, so if you just put none, right, that it just applies the PyGame font. You could say Arial, right, or cursive, things like that. I guess I could say cursive. Let's see what happens with that. And then a font size, I'll say 45. Okay, so I can use this font style later. Great, that's everything we need, right? When I run my game, this will be initialized, creating our players, the ball, the score, everything we really need to get it going. Well done. Moving on, we can go down to my next step in my process, right? Was making paddles. All right, so a large part of programming is you know what you want to do, right? So let's just say paddle. I know what I want to do here, but the issue is like, how do I do it, right? So what would I be Googling? Like make rectangle in PyGame, right? I spelled rectangle wrong. I'd probably be Googling things like this, right? And, and inevitably it would lead me to discover draw. Right, so draw allows us in PyGame to draw different shapes. What shape do I want to draw? Well, a paddle is a rectangle. I want to draw a rectangle. All right, so now you can see, no, you can't see. There we go. It tells me the information we need here. And if you're missing this, you can just head over to the PyGame documentation. By Googling PyGame Draw, you can see the first link there, right? You should get comfortable reading documentation. It's going to help you and further your understanding. So right down here, it says draw. What am I trying to draw? A rect? Okay, well, here's the first one. And then to draw the ball, I'm going to be drawing a circle. If I click on draw rect, it shows me how to use it, shows me the function, and it tells me the arguments I need to put inside. If I don't know what the surface is, it explains what it is as well. It explains the information we need. You should be applying the knowledge in reading this documentation. So inside rect, where do I want to draw? I want to draw it on my screen, so self.screen. What color is it going to be? It's going to be white. So I'm going to drop in our variable white. And then it's about where do I want to draw it. So the rect value. What is the value of the rect object I'm trying to draw? I need to give it an x, a y, a width, and a height. Let's begin with the x and y. How do I target and get the x and y position of player 1? If we remember, player 1 is held in a list, right? So I could just, I'll take my list and I'll target the first part. The same thing applies for the second part, right? Ideally, I could target the second part. This is the x and y. The issue is this is only of player 1. I still need to do the same thing for player 2. I could create a function paddle 1, paddle 2 that's repetitive. What if I give like a position in here? This will be a player. And the player, I'll be able to give it player 1 and player 2. So let's just replace this with position. So position 1, 2. Great. What is the width and the height? Well, we know that the paddle width, I made a variable for that. And then the paddle height is also stored in a variable. That's it. That draws us a single paddle. All right. So let's see if we can apply what we learned to make a ball. If you want, pause the video and try to make a ball. Great. Let me come down here. Let's create a new function called ball. All right, inside ball, I'm also going to give it the position, just like we did with the paddle. All right, now the only difference is this time I want to draw a circle. Okay, it tells us the same values that circle accepts, so I'm going to apply those. Where do I want to draw it? On my screen. What color do I want this to be? It's going to be white. Where is this going to be? Well, it's going to be in a single position, right? And then finally, what is the radius? Right, this is for a circle only. So I'm going to say ball radius. We made a variable. All right, so this draws the ball, that's it. I've done two major tasks. Yeah, we need to get them on the screen. Let's actually do that right now so you can start to see some things. So to get this on our screen, I'm going to go down and we're going to make a game function to basically run the game. So let's just call it run game. Okay. Make sure everything's spelled correctly because I clearly just butchered that. Okay, very quickly, an initial brief setup. Let's just create a while loop. I'll say while run. I do this to create a flag because if I say while true, how do I stop that? Break, right? Don't use break. We try and avoid using break. If I have a variable, it's like a light switch. I can turn it on and off, right? Like that. Okay. So while run, let's just take our screen. I'm going to say fill, and I'm going to give it my background color. Okay, great. And then all I need to do is say, let's say paddle. So I'm going to call paddle once. I'm going to call paddle again. And then I'm going to call ball. Okay, so inside paddle, what do I need to give it? A position, which is actually a list. So here I can say player 1. I'm going to give it that list. I'm going to give this one player 2. And then ball, we are going to give it the ball position list. That's really it. Okay, don't forget the last key steps. In a loop, every time the loop runs, I want my display, my game screen to update. This is pivotal. This is key. My clock, self.clock, I'm going to apply tick. Okay, so inside here, how often? FPS, frames per second. Let's say like 40. That's really all we need to get started here. I will dive into detail a bit later. Let's just run this, right? So if the name of our file is equal to the main Python file, I'll create a game object, right? Because I'm in a class, Pong game, and we can just say game.runGame. Let's run our code. And you can see that cursive isn't there, so I tried that. I'm just going to go up. The default, let's just change it to, where is it? Oh, here we go. I'm going to say none. That's just the PyGame font. For now, I can change that later. You hear the music. That's loud. I'm going to turn that down. But we didn't actually see the screen, just the really loud music, which I've turned down. A quick fix for that is I'm going to structure my game event loop right now. Every application we use, could be a game, could be a website, Google Chrome, Facebook. The first thing that the website is checking for, the game, every time to see if you quit. If you quit, we need to shut down. All right, so typically I like to install this when I create the loop. It works sometimes, here it didn't, right? I'm gonna say for E, this means event, for event in all my PyGame events. Okay, so I'm gonna get them all. The first event we're gonna listen for is if the E.type, so if the type of event is equal to a quit event. I can take my variable run, this is why I use it, and I can just switch the value to false. That's it, right? This is why I use a flag variable. And then we imported system. I'm just going to apply exit right here. It'll help the application close faster. When I run this now, you won't hear the music. I've turned it down. But you do see our game screen, right? Nothing's moving, but we're off to a great start. All right, let's carry on. So closing out, coming up here, I'm going to go up to move the ball. All right, so let's create a method called like update ball. Okay, now inside here, I'm going to take the ball's position, which we currently have. So let's get the first speed. This is the ball X speed. And I could copy and paste that because we're going to get the ball Y speed. Change that to 1. So every time I call this method, I'm going to take the current ball speed. Nope. Every time I call this method, I'm going to take the current ball position and I'm just going to add the ball speed. Okay, just like that. So I can copy this. So every time this function is called, it is increasing the speed on the X and the Y of our ball. Okay, I need a few conditions because now we need to get the ball to basically kind of bounce in a way. And this is just going to bounce off the screen, off the edges of the wall. So I'm going to say if the ball position, Okay, so if the y position of the ball is less than or equal to the ball's radius, okay, that's 1, that's going to bounce. Or let's take the ball's y position is greater than or equal to our height, okay? It's going to bounce, but it is going to bounce, okay? But the issue is if this is our screen, hi, our ball is only targeted, like I showed you in the picture. I'm going to put that here now, actually. It's only targeting in the top left. That's the X and Y. So it will bounce, but it'll look like it leaves the screen for a split second. So what I can do is I'm just going to subtract here, and I'm going to subtract the ball radius. Okay, that will account for that. Okay, great, that's my condition. So if it bounces off the top, or if it bounces off the bottom, to get it to bounce, I need to take my ball's speed, right? And we can just take the x, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say is equal to a negative number now. Okay, so self.ball speed, this is just going to help it bounce back. Great. Now comes the time where I need to check if the ball hits a paddle, right? Because if we hit either paddle, the ball needs to bounce as well. I should be structuring our code in a different way, so I'm going to start that now. I'm going to create a different method, which is responsible for checking if the ball touches a paddle, and it's going to return to us a value that says so. So it's going to return to us true or false. So let's go before this actually. So I'm going to, let's say, check if ball hits paddle. Okay, let's create a method. Let's say hit paddle, okay, self. And just in case we're wondering, right, we're not taking anything, this will return a Boolean value. All right, so our hit paddle, right, it's going to return a Boolean, but it needs to know a few things. So like it needs the ball's position, because I need to know where the ball is if I need to check if it hit a paddle, as well as it needs to know the paddle position. Okay, so I'm going to give it 2 arguments. We are going to return a Boolean value, right? So if the paddle's x position is less than the ball's x position, and the ball's x position is less than our paddle's position, okay, plus the width, okay? We need to keep in mind the paddle width, or else the ball will look like it goes into the paddle, okay? That's 1. And what is the other possibility that could happen here? So let's actually keep this more fluid. Let's say and, because that's one whole expression right there. We need to do the same thing for the next paddle. Okay, so I'll say paddle y, or paddle 2, I should say. It's not really 1 or 2. This is going to represent the ball touching paddle 1. This is going to represent ball touching paddle 2. I could really just actually copy this because it's all the same except our index values. So let's say here, whoops. Great. Let's just change it to 1, which represents our second paddle. Great. So this is just going to return to us true or false. True if we hit, right? And false if we don't. We don't really need to know which paddle we hit, right? Because all we need to do is just reverse the speed, which is a negative number. All right. So we have this now. So I can use this in an expression, right? If we were to carry on in our update ball method, I could just say if hit paddle, right? So I can use that now. If the ball hits the paddle, what do I need to give it? Well, I need to give it the ball's position, like we discussed, and I need to give it the player 1. Now, this is only good for the first one, so I can say or. Let's just take our whole expression again. Okay, so I'm going to change this now to say player 2. Okay, so if the ball touches player 1 or player 2, that's what we're translating this to, then we want to do the same thing. I just want to reverse the ball's speed. All right, to reverse the ball's speed, we just need to take the ball's speed and we're giving it a negative number. Now I'm noticing something here. I've put 0 in both of these. We need to change this. Okay, so this is our condition to see if the ball bounces on the top or the bottom. These aren't players. So that's actually the Y position. The paddles, the ball is moving in our X position. All right, so let me change this. I'm targeting the X. Let's just target our Y speed here. Okay, remember, if we go up here to our ball speed, you can see that this is our x speed, this is our y. These were the variables we made up top. That's really it, okay? This method we could make responsible for score. Let's say if the ball's position, okay, so let's say 0, is less than 0. That means it's gone too far to the left. So I'm going to take player 2, or P2 score, and we're going to give player 2 a score. And then I don't even have it yet, but I need to reset, right? When one person gets a score, the ball needs to go back to the middle of the screen again. All right, let's just finish off here. The only difference with this is we're going to say greater than, and this is going to be player 1 gets a score. But we still need to reset. Wonderful. All right, we're pretty much done, guys, with the logic. You see here, I'm trying to reset. All right, so let's create a method that actually does do that job of resetting the game. So really, to do this, I'm going to go up and I'm just going to get the ball's starting position. I can copy this whole variable because the ball's going to start at the same location. So when we call this method, it's just going to assign the ball the same starting position. But one thing I want to do is I want to randomize this a bit. All right, so I want the ball to like randomly choose left or right, not go the same direction every time. This is why we imported random to use here. I'm going to create like a random direction. Okay, so the ball is going to go in a random direction, and we imported choice, which takes a list, and it's going to choose a random item from that. So let's make a list, and let's make 2 variables here. Well, I don't even have to. Let's just say -1 or 1. So -1 means go left, all right, and 1 could mean go right. Then really the only thing we need to do is now change the ball speed. Right? This is going to be affected by that. So our ball speed, we've already created this, and this is a list, right? We have x, so we have ball speed x, and we have ball speed y. The only thing now is to my ball speed x, I'm going to multiply it by that random direction. Okay, so it's going to choose one of those for us. This will affect it left. If it gets that negative number, we're going left. Otherwise, it's right. All right, so this is really good. We have reset done. Our game's pretty much done. Let me just let me call reset now. So if player 2 gets a score, we would like to reset. And if player 1 gets a score, we would like to reset. This is truly wonderful. Cool. If we go down now to our loop, I'm gonna jump in here actually. Let's get the ball moving. The paddles won't move. Let's just say update ball. The next step in our phase, so I've called the ball. I need to control the arrow keys so I can really carry on with our event here, right? We've already set up our quit event, and I want to handle this a little bit differently. So I'm going to create a variable called keys, and this is going to be equal to when any key gets pressed. So really, this variable keys is a variable that is like an event listener. It's listening to any key that gets pressed. Let's give some space here. Okay, so now we can basically take that variable, that key down event, and link it to a key. If keys, let's start with player 1. Let's go KW. So if the W key is pressed and player 1, Y position is greater than 0. It means they are not touching the top of the screen. They are allowed to then continue to move. So I can take the player's position. We're going to subtract and equal, let's say paddle speed. I made that earlier. If we go up, so paddle speed I made here earlier. Okay, so paddle speed, right? I'm just applying that to our paddle's movement. All right, keeping those constant variables is going to make it easier in the long run. Let's come down here and say elif. We can target our other one, so our S key. So if the S key is pressed and player 1's position, their Y position, is less than the height of the screen minus the height of the paddle, right? We need to take into account for that as well. If that's the case, we can take our player 1, if I can spell player correctly, make sure we get their Y position. This time we're going to add the paddle speed, just like so. It's great. The player 1 is done. We can do the same thinking for player 2. So let's take keys, but this time we're going to do the up key is pressed. And player 2, that's who we're dealing with, their Y position is greater than 0. Same thing applies. So player 2, Y position, let's minus equal our speed. So paddle speed. Okay, very nice. And our final elif, right, keys, K down. We're going to go down this time. You can see I'm using the curly brackets. Don't make that mistake. Wonderful. And the player's Y position is also less than the height of the screen minus the paddle height. Great. Let's take our player 2 this time, and we can still add our speed. Not ball speed, player speed. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna clean this up. So really at this point, if we just run our game, we should start to see some things come to life. Okay, well, all right, the first thing I see, my ball's not moving. Let's check our platforms. Oh, there we go. Boom, boom. We can move, oh, well, okay. He moves too far to the bottom. He works perfectly. So let me address that now before we fix this ball. Okay, so closing that out, let's just go to down. So it's really the S key. And you can see here that I actually said pedal width. This should be pedal height. Okay, save that, run that just before we fix the ball. Cool, let's go down now. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, now let's get this ball moving. So when I try to run the game, the ball's not moving, but we are calling the ball here. So there's definitely an issue coming from my ball method. If I go up here, let's kind of go through this together. So we are updating the ball's X position while simultaneously updating the Y position. This is good. If the X position is less than the rate, oh, wait, no, okay. If the Y position minus the ball's radius is less than or equal to 0, okay, so minus the radius, okay, or the is greater than the, wait, plus ball radius. I forgot the ball's radius there. Okay, greater than the height. Okay. Let me run this. I didn't even check the other part. I'm seeing if there's a little detail change that. Not yet. Okay, we heard that music. That's great. Okay. We update that. If our paddles hit. All right. This is the big freezer. This is what's freezing it. This is it. So, look, in our first condition, right, it's checking if we're less than we're stopping. So, these two have frozen our ball. Okay, so if my ball's position is greater than the width of the screen, there we go. Look at that. And you can see the ball actually bouncing. So, not off the paddles. Oh, there we go. Yes, it is. Oh, okay. So let's fix that. Okay, if we trash that, all right, let's go up to hit paddle. Okay, hit paddle looks like we're good. Yeah. Okay, wait. There we go. Yeah, we're good. We have a game. Wonderful. Okay. So everything's carried away there. The only real thing we need now is if we return to the base of our game, okay, I'm just going to get some text on the screen here. I'm going to come down to the bottom after we have everything working, all right? And let's say like P1 text, I'm creating an object, P2 text. All right, so our player 1 text, I need to tap in, we created font earlier. So I'm going to tap into that. And now I can use that to render font onto my game screen. What do I want to render? Well, I want to render the score as a string. So that's why you can see I'm using the string function. We can say true, and then what color do we want it to be? I want it to be white. Okay, so I'm going to drop in white there. I can just copy this. The only real thing we're changing is to P2 score right here. All right. Once we have these two objects, we can take our screen, and I'm going to say blit. Blit allows us to paste. I didn't say blit, did I? Blit allows us to paste on the screen there. We can say P1 text. Where do I want to put it? Well, this is going to be interesting. So player 1 text is going to be in the top left. I'm going to take my width, not white, width. Divide by 4, that'll put it over there. And then we're gonna bounce it away 20 from the top. We can take our screen again. We can do blit. What are we doing? We're doing the player 2 text this time. This time we would like it to be self.width. You can really just put any hard-coded number here as well. This will just affect if you change your game screen size by doing this, it's much easier. Anyways, we're going to multiply that by 3. That gives us thirds. Let's just divide it by 4 then. And then the other, we'll say 20 from the top. That's really great. The final thing is no one wins or loses. So really, we can just have a winning condition here. And we could say something like if the player, let's say P1 score. Okay, so if the player score is greater than or equal to 5, or P2 score is greater than or equal to 5, you can just say run is equal to false. That is it, guys. Wow. Let's run the game. Let me try and play it now. Let's get one player up to 5 points. So that's 1. I don't want this to last forever, so I'm just going to try and get our player to get 5 points. Right? And you can see that the ball's randomly changing directions. Sometimes it goes the same way, other times it doesn't. It alternates. That's good. Boom. Well done. That's our game, right? It works. Let's just change the speeds real quick. Remember, all you have to do to change the speed is go to the top of your code. Paddle speed, we could bump up to 10. Ball speed, where is ball speed? Let's also bump that. Let's say 12. Okay, just by doing that, running this, we're going to see some major changes. Oh, whoa, that's better. Wow. Okay, I think you get what I'm getting at, right? That is amazing. We now have a completed game and we just cut out, okay? So our game, I went through the steps with you guys of importing our modules. We created a class to organize this for our object-oriented programming. We have all of our constant variables. We spent time initializing the game. What variables are going to be changing in the game? What do we need to start a game, right? My game screen, my clock, all right? We created our players as well as the ball, okay? The methods we had in the game, we were able to create a paddle by using draw from PyGame. We can draw different shapes. We made a ball. We made a Boolean checker, right? So this is really just returning a Boolean to see if the ball has hit or not, okay? Our update ball method, this is responsible for the overall movement of the ball. We had reset for resetting the ball. And then our main game loop held in the run game method. All right, so guys, remember, this is over. In the link in the description, if you guys need help with this code, comment and let me know your thought. What did you think of this project? And I know that this is an easy PyGame, right? There's no pictures, there's no outside help, all right? And I wanted to start this off because this is the first game, well, actually it's the second one, in my Python course. Right? This game is meant to get you started and understanding to really see how you can take your logic and put that to create something. All right, so comment and let me know, what games would you guys like to see going forward? Give me suggestions and I can create them in code with you guys here on Code with Josh. All right, so you have a working PyGame. All right, well done. Well done, guys. That is your final project. That is your final ping pong game done in PyGame. And I really hope you were able to see that by harboring and fostering your knowledge of pure Python with very little outside help from PyGame, you were able to create a game. And I really hope that my thought process was able to help you guys break it down into terms you can understand. All right, remember, comment below and let me know what you thought of today's episode and like this video. Like and subscribe, guys. If you've made it this far and you're not subscribed, come on. That's just rude. What are you doing, right? If you made it this far and you haven't liked it already, well, I assume you gained some value. So that does help me out. Thanks, guys. Shout out to you for that. Let me know what you guys want to see in the coming content, all right? Until next time on Code with Josh, I was stoked for today's episode. I will see you then.